All right, well, maybe week one went really well for you. Maybe it didn't. Maybe some of my start sits didn't hit, but I know some of them did. And you know what? It was a weird week one. Nobody's seen some of the games turning out the way they did. But that's why we're here. We all learn. We all adapt. We figure out matchups. Now that we see what we see in week one, week two, through 18 is going to be a lot better. So why don't we go ahead? This is a start sit video for the wide receivers and quarterbacks. Let's go ahead and kick it off with the wide receivers. Starting off as Thursday Night Football, we got the Minnesota Vikings at the Philadelphia Eagles. And Justin Jefferson is doing Justin Jefferson things. I mean, unbelievable. He got his targets that he's supposed to get, maybe a couple less, but still put up really, really good numbers, especially in fantasy. The output's there, and he's going to continue that week after week. And then what was really surprising was we seen Jordan Addison out-target KJ Osborne. And got a touchdown, by the way. So Jordan Addison's looking like how Adam Thielen was the first year with Justin Jefferson. So Jordan Addison is going to be a start as well over this week for me after that production in week one against the Buccaneers. Now he's going up against the Eagles, where the Eagles just barely beat the Patriots 25-20. And not off a great offensive performance either from Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense. However, I'm going to start Jordan Addison and sit KJ Osborne. Now, going to the Eagles side, you're starting A.J. Brown, you're starting Devontae Smith. They're getting their targets, they're getting their looks. Yes, the yards might not be there quite yet. Maybe it wasn't in the red zone, whatever. They still put up decent fantasy points. Maybe not the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 combo that they should be, but they're still going to put up fantasy viable points. And if Baker Mayfield can do it to them in Minnesota against the Vikings, then I expect the Eagles to do the same at home against Minnesota. So A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are going to be starts, and Quez Watkins will be a sit for me in that matchup. Moving on to the 1 o'clock slate here, we do have the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. And after week one's performance, it seems undoubtedly that Zay Flowers was the main guy for Lamar Jackson, the target. Not a great day for Lamar. However, a great day for Zay Flowers in his first game in the NFL. I expect this to continue against the Bengals. He looks like he's going to be the first look option for Lamar, so expect that to continue. That being said, Zay Flowers will be a start. Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman will be sits. Not a whole lot of targets, and if they did get targets, they didn't get a lot of production with them. You know, maybe a couple catches, but not a whole lot of yardage. Zay Flowers had the whole package. He had touchdown, he had the receiving yards, he had the receptions, and that's what you need in PPR, especially PPR fantasy football. Moving on to the Bengals side here, Jamar Chase is going to be a start for me. Joe Burrow struggled last week. I mean, let's be honest. Jamar Chase didn't have the best fantasy production. However, he got the looks and he got the targets. Not a whole lot of yards, not a touchdown, but he's getting the targets. He was the only guy actually getting production with his targets. I mean, T. Higgins didn't reel anything in. Tyler Boyd might have had 1 or 2 catches there. Did not do much with that. Jamar Chase seems to be the only guy that I'm willing to start right now until we see anything other than what we've seen this past Sunday. So for that, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd are sits. Jamar Chase is a start. Seahawks and Lions now. We got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Going to be starts for me. DK Metcalf had the targets. Tyler Lockett was in the game script. However, unfortunately, due to a concussion protocol situation, they had to take him out. Now he does not have a concussion from what all reports show, so he should be good against the Lions, but and just the way the game was scripted just was not a great day for Seattle. So that being said, Tyler Lockett, I think, is going to be more involved in this game if he plays, which he should from all reports that I'm seeing. So DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are in there. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 3 targets the whole entire game, 2 catches, did not do much with it, and especially with that wrist injury, I don't really trust it still. Yes, he just had surgery, and he was supposed to be out for 4 weeks and be back week 5, but that was not the case. He played week 1. Lions, I'm going to start Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm going to actually start Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds was on par with St. Brown in targets against Kansas City on Thursday night. And it looks like Jared Goff, if he can't get to the first option of St. Brown, it looks like Josh Reynolds will be that secondary option. And I really like this production from these guys. I think that's going to be a great matchup in Seattle. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and sit Marvin Jones in this one. Detroit's on for a big game in this one, so if you have these 2 guys, I'd make sure to start them. Now that takes us to Indianapolis and the Houston Texans. This is going to be an interesting one. Michael Pittman Jr. did have the production in week 1. A lot of that came from the yak, yards after catch. Other than that, Alec Pierce is not going to be a guy I'm going to be starting in Josh Downs until we see a little bit better production from Richardson. He did not have a terrible game, but just not a good one to make any of these guys fantasy viable other than Pittman. It just looked like he had it going. He catches the ball, he's going to kind of have that Jalen Waddle effect. He's not as fast, he's not as elusive, but he'll get some yards. Don't worry about that. Texans side of the ball, Nico Collins will be a start for me. That's the guy that C.J. Stroud is going to continue to target. That is his number 1 option. Looks like Dalton Schultz will be his number 2. So for the other 2 receivers, and Robert Woods and Tank Dell, I'm not ready to start those guys quite yet. Chicago at Tampa Bay, and Chicago just had a disappointing performance overall. Not a great outing against the Packers in Soldier Field. Now, that being said, after trading for a first-round pick, you got to start getting DJ Moore the ball more. Okay? It's in his last name. So, for that, Darnell Mooney, before DJ Moore got there, that was Justin Fields' guy. And I expect that to continue here in this season. Darnell Mooney seems to be the number 1 look on the reads for the passing plays, and it looks like DJ Moore will be the number 2. Maybe that's a game-to-game thing. We'll have to wait and see how this week plays out. But I do think Darnell Mooney should be a start moving forward until we see anything otherwise. Justin Fields just loved targeting him the last couple years before DJ Moore got here. And DJ Moore is going to have to get the production. There's no way you don't put him in the rotation to get catches, get targets. You got to throw it to him more. And I expect that to change from week 1 to week 2. Look for DJ Moore to get the ball more. Chase Claypool is going to be a sit for me on Chicago side. Moving to Tampa Bay side, Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. Not a great name to hear at starting quarterback, but got the job done against Minnesota. Didn't do a whole lot, but he did just enough to make these 2 guys fantasy viable, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That should continue here in a better matchup, I think, than what they faced last week against Minnesota. They're home, and it's up against the Bears, who just got struggling left and right going for them against the Packers in week 1. So start Mike Evans and start Chris Godwin. I'm going to go ahead and sit Trey Palmer in this matchup. Kansas City and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is going to be an interesting one. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start Rashee Rice and Kadarius Toney. Now, before you turn off the whole entire video, hear me out. Kadarius Toney just could not catch the ball. That is not something that he usually does consistently. If you go back to his time with the Giants, he was able to reel in those tough catches. I don't know what it was in week 1. It was just a weird all the way around. Kadarius Toney is going to have a bounce back in week 2 in a matchup where I expect them to throw the ball a lot more than what they did in week 1. Now, if Kelsey's back, that of course is going to open up more opportunity for Toney. However, if he's not back, Toney's still going to get the targets. He had 5 in week 1, and Rashee Rice was the same in that range. Those guys led the team in targets and made some production with Rashee Rice in that touchdown, and that was touchdown dependent. Let's be honest, he did have a couple yards here and there, but he was mostly that touchdown that put him relevant. And Kadarius Toney, on the other hand, if he makes those catches and makes a couple turns, we're talking a whole other thing in week 2. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore will be sits for me. They did not bring in a lot of their catches or their targets. They did not catch a lot of their targets, and they actually didn't get targeted a whole lot. So, for that reason, those 2 will be starts for me. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore will be sits for me. Rashee Rice and Kadarius Toney will be starts for me in this matchup. Moving on to the Jacksonville side of the ball, Calvin Ridley. I said he was back. People don't believe me. Go look at his stats. He had 1,000 yards in every single year, and that was with Julio Jones in Atlanta. That being said, now he's got Jacksonville, who's a high-octane offense. They're going to throw the ball, but they do such a good job at balancing offense and, with their offense. I mean, you get the running, you get the passing. It's a good balance, but they're still going to throw the ball almost 30 times a game. Calvin Ridley made that happen in week 1 with a great production. Trevor Lawrence was looking to him, and it's going to continue in week 2 in this matchup. Zay Jones is also going to be a start for me. He actually got a lot of targets as well out of this game. The only one that kind of disappointed me was Christian Kirk. Did not a lot of targets, kind of was an afterthought in this past game against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. So Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones starts. Christian Kirk will be a sit in this matchup. Green Bay and the Falcons. Christian Watson is still questionable, but it does seem like he might be back this week. If he is back, I lean at him to be more of a flex. Now, if he is not back, Romeo Doubs is a must-start. He's a must-start. He led the team in targets and made the production happen. He had a touchdown. He had the yardage. He was just there. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, that thought Jaden Reed was going to step in and kind of take some of those targets away. No. I was wrong on that one. Jaden Reed got 3 targets all game, I believe. It was under 5 targets. Meanwhile, Romeo Doubs was just completely the main factor in the passing game, and that I expect to continue with or without Christian Watson. However, Romeo Doubs is a must-start if Watson isn't there. Find room on him as your flex if possible, because that is somebody I want in my lineup. Jaden Reed's going to be a sit for me. Now, looking at the Atlanta side of the ball, Drake London's going to be a start. That game against Carolina was set up to be a run-heavy game. You got 2 out of the 3 running backs in Atlanta are big cowbell-type running backs. Okay? They might not be Derrick Henry height, but Bijan Robinson is built like a tank. And Tyler Algier is a smaller guy, but he is also built like a tank when it comes to the running game. That was the whole script last week. Drake London will be a start this week for me. They're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. They can't rely on the run defense. The front 7 for Green Bay is going to be a lot better. Matt Collins and Scott Miller will be sits for me in this matchup. Drake London's going to get the most of the targets. It's him and Kyle Pitts in the passing game. These guys might be, here and there, but Drake London and Kyle Pitts are going to be the main targets of passing game. So I'm going to start Drake London in that one. Las Vegas at the Buffalo Bills. Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers were fantasy relevant with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, quarterback situation, maybe. Find out a little bit later on the quarterback side. But Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers will be starts. However, Myers did go into concussion protocol. It does seem like he is likely, or at least seems likely, to be a start in week 2. Seems like he's going to suit up and play. Does have to clear that protocol, though. If he does play, I am starting him. He was the main guy that was targeted. It seemed like Devontae Adams was taken out. Once they got Myers going, then Adams started going, because you couldn't just take all the attention and put it on Adams. You had to kind of spread it around. No Derek Carr means no Hunter Renfrow as of right now. That was Derek Carr's guy to look for on second reads. I don't see that happening with Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll wait and see as the season goes on. But as of right now, sit Hunter Renfrow. Disappointing game for Buffalo, and they're going to be looking for revenge in this matchup. So I'm starting Stephon Diggs. Now, Gabe Davis did have some targets, had some good plays. Nothing enough to where you need to start him yet. But keep an eye on him. As of this week, I'm going to sit him and Deontay Hardy. And Stephon Diggs, he was the guy. He was doing it against Sauce Gardner. He got open. There was the offensive pass interference or whatever that happened. It's going to continue to be a thing for Stephon Diggs. He's going to find a way to get open. So start Stephon Diggs and sit the other 2 here going into week 2. And the last 1 o'clock game on the slate is going to be the Chargers at Tennessee. A back-to-back blow after blow game for the Miami Dolphins and the LA Chargers. This is going to be a good matchup for Keenan Allen and Mike Williams to finally bounce up into that potential that you probably expected them to be week 1. This is a great matchup. I absolutely love this matchup. High-octane offense up against a struggling defense. This is going to be something that these guys got to be in your starting lineups. So if you have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, find a spot in your lineup, plug it. Don't even think about it again. Let it ride. Joshua Palmer will be a sit for me for the Chargers. That being said, moving on to the Tennessee side, DeAndre Hopkins will be a start. It looked like the production was there. Tannehill knew he was able to throw it up there for a 50-50, get the ball to Hopkins. He knows the deal. They've both been in the league long enough. They've both been veterans. They're veterans now. This is going to be something that is going to continue unless something happens. Now, until something happens or changes here, Treylon Burke and Westbrook will be sits for me. So moving forward, Hopkins will be a start until I see anything differently, but Burks and Westbrook will be sits. Starting off the 4 o'clock slates, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the LA Rams. Brandon Ayuk, an amazing game against the Steelers in week 1. He's going to continue to be a start for me in week 2. And Deebo Samuel, I think, is going to have a little bit of a bounce back. Not a terrible game week 1, but he could do better. We need Deebo to be Deebo. Now, I'm not saying Deebo needs to have 40 points, but Deebo could get you up in the 17, high teens, low 20s. That's the Deebo that we need, especially if he's going to be your wide receiver 2 or flex play in week 2. I don't think Deebo Samuel's a lot of people's number 1. Now, if he is, hopefully you have some good depth there, because Deebo is a great player, but it doesn't seem like Brock Purdy is going to be targeting him as much as Brandon Ayuk. Juwan Jennings will be a sit for me for the 49ers in this matchup. He's kind of an afterthought on the offense. He might have one game where it's like, whoa, all right, maybe we need to look at him, and then he's going to go right back to the irrelevant unless something happens between Ayuk or Samuel. On the LA Rams side, everyone thought Van Jefferson. Experts. I did. I thought Van Jefferson was going to be the guy eating the targets. Nope. Not one bit. 10 catches on 15 targets and 119 yards for a Puka Nasua. Who? Yeah, that's what I thought when I seen the name. We heard about Tutu Atwell, but not enough to where you thought he's going to have a great season or anything. You kind of thought of him as maybe he's a sleeper later on in the draft. You can pick him off waivers, and, injuries happen. You might be able to stash him and play him later in the year, or you might be able to pick him off waivers after 1 or 2 good games and see what happens. Puka and Tutu will be a start for me in week 2. This is going to be a good back-and-forth matchup. The Rams play a lot better on the road than they do, play a lot better at home than they do on the road. However, they just played really great on the road. So if that's how they played on the road, imagine what they can do at home. Van Jefferson will be a sit for me in this one. It seems like the targets are going to go to Tutu and Puka. Both had 119 yards. I mean, that's production in fantasy. We'll take it. New York Giants and the Arizona Cardinals. Darius Slayton will be a start for me in this one, and Isaiah Hodgins. Jalen Hyatt will be a sit. Now, I'm starting Slayton and Hodgins because of the fact that last week was so bad. The defense just ate them up. Daniel Jones was just not doing it for him. However, that being said, I think this is a bounce-back matchup against Joshua Dobbs and the Cardinals. And speaking of Joshua Dobbs, he didn't have a great game either. But Marquise Brown did. And that's why Marquise Brown's going to be a start for me for the Cardinals. I'm going to sit Rondale Moore and Michael Wilson, though. On the other hand, look out for Marquise Brown to be the main guy that Dobbs goes to. New York Jets. And boy, no Aaron Rodgers. 4 plays is all it took for his first year out of Green Bay, to go from great to bad to worse. That being said, Garrett Wilson's going to do Garrett Wilson things. Whether it's a bad ball like you've seen Zach Wilson throw to him in the end zone, Garrett Wilson made that play happen. And that's going to continue. You're going to need Garrett Wilson to do that. Now, Zach Wilson's not the best quarterback. I wouldn't be jumping at the gun to have Garrett Wilson in your starting lineups other than maybe a flex or a low-end wide receiver 2. As long as Zach Wilson is Zach Wilson, you need him to be more productive. He's got to be more productive and getting better throws to these receivers. He didn't expect to play game 1, but man, you got to be ready to play, especially when you're number 2 pick overall. Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, both Aaron Rodgers weapons, are going to be sits for me until I see what happens with them. On the Dallas side of the ball, CeeDee Lamb doing CeeDee Lamb things. 77 yards, a couple catches. Nothing major, but a good overall solid day for a starter. Somebody I would hope to be wide receiver 1 by the end of the year was more of a wide receiver 2 low end. I mean, you're not going to complain. He got points. He got double digits. Obviously, you want more, but that's not bad considering what we've seen from other teams and other players. On the other hand, Michael Gallup is also going to be a start for me in this matchup. Michael Gallup out-targeted Brandon Cooks. That being said, Brandon Cooks is also questionable this matchup. So if Brandon Cooks is out, Michael Gallup's going to get the secondary targets, and that's something that you need to look for to maybe put in your flex position or low-end wide receiver too. Brandon Cooks, like I said, is questionable, so he's going to be a sit this week for me. Moving on to Washington against the Denver Broncos. Terry McLaurin looks like he is healthy and ready to come back. So, Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson are going to be starts for me in this matchup. Curtis Samuel is questionable, and he's going to be a sit. Now, on the Broncos side, Courtland Sutton's going to be a start. He took majority of the targets in week 1. Jerry Jeudy is questionable, but again, if Jerry Jeudy plays, they clearly need a secondary receiver. So if Jerry Jeudy plays, even if he's not 100% and he comes out there, he's going to put up some points to make it respectable, in my opinion. That being said, Jeudy plays and he's not 100%. I'd put him at a flex. Courtland Sutton should be in your starting lineups in this matchup. This is a great matchup for Courtland Sutton. Like I said, he got majority of the targets in week 1 against the Raiders. And this is an even better matchup. If Joshua Dobbs just did to the Washington Commanders last week, you should expect Russell Wilson to do that, if not better, in week 2. Marvin Mims will be a sit for me in this matchup as well. Tyreek Hill will be a start for me in this one. Jalen Waddle will also be a start. There's no doubt about that. And Cedric Wilson Jr. will be a sit. Patriots side of the ball, Juju Smith-Schuster will be a start, and Kendrick Bourne will be a start. Both guys got a lot of targets. Kendrick Bourne cashed in on like touchdown or two. That's something that I'm going to be looking at going forward. If Kendrick Bourne can continue to cash on those touchdowns and get some more targets in that process, you might be looking to pick him up in waiver wires. Not somebody I expect to have a lot of people on their roster right now. That being said, keep an eye out for him in the next couple weeks. Devontae Parker will also be a sit in this matchup for me for the Patriots. Not a whole lot of production of going around for Devontae Parker. Moving on to the two Monday Night Football games. New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers, and you're going to start Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. They both put up good production. They both showed that, hey, this is just a warm-up. This is just a warm-up. Wait until we get Alvin Kamara back and we could spread the ball around even more because you can't guard us and leave Kamara open. These guys are going to get their targets. They're going to get their shares. They're going to go ahead and continue doing what they need to do. They're not wide receiver ones quite yet, but they're wide receiver 2 or flex position guys. So if you can find a room for them or you need them because of an injury in week 1, go ahead and plug them in here. I like this matchup. This is a great matchup. I honestly think Chris Olave is a wide receiver 1 type of matchup this week, and I think Michael Thomas is more of the number 2 guy in the offense. Rashid Shaheed is going to be a sit for me on the Saints side, and then Carolina, just trash it all. I don't want anything to do with their wide receivers. Bryce Young looks like he's only going into the tight end. Couple targets to these guys here and there, not much production-wise. Just give me Hayden Hurst at that point and call it a day. And the last Monday Night Football game is going to be the Browns at the Steelers. A lot of injuries going to the Steelers side. So, no Cam Hayward. No rush up the middle. You'd still have TJ Watt, but no defensive lineman like Cam Hayward to replace him. That being said, you're going to expect a lot from Nick Chubb. Now, if they want to stack the box, go ahead and do so. It should be better weather conditions than what we've seen this past Sunday in Cleveland with the Bengals-Browns game. Amari Cooper did pretty well. Elijah Moore on a couple gadget plays. I expect those to continue. I'm starting Elijah Moore as more of a flex low-end wide receiver 2. Amari Cooper is more of a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 in this matchup. Donovan Peoples-Jones will continue to be a sit for me until I see anything different. On the Steelers side of the ball, Deontay Johnson's doubtful, and I'm not starting Allen Robinson. Not doing it. Pat Freiermuth is also questionable with the chest injury. If he's out, George Pickens is going to be the main target guy. I mean, who else are you going to throw it to? George Pickens should be in your lineup as a high-end wide receiver 2, low-mid flex play. Like, he's in that range. I don't know if I'd put him in over anybody spectacular, but if you could throw him in at your flex spot, go ahead and do so because that's a great matchup. So that's going to do it for the wide receiver portion. Now, there's a lot to talk about there. So I'm going to try to run through this quarterback one a little bit quicker if I still got your attention. Now we got to pair up those wide receivers with the quarterback. Let's go ahead and do so. Thursday Night Football, Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles. Kirk Cousins and Jalen Hurts are both going to be starts for me. This is going to be a bounce-back game, in my opinion, for Jalen Hurts. Kirk Cousins performed well. Just 2 fumbles and an interception. Got to control those turnovers. Now, I know primetime Kirk is not the best. However, I think this is a matchup that you're going to see go back and forth a little bit. It should be an all-around good game. Ravens and Bengals again. And that's going to start our 1 o'clock games, and I'm going to sit Lamar Jackson. I did not see enough in week 1. 159 yards is not enough for me to go ahead and throw him as a start. Yes, the rushing upside is there. However, Zay Flowers is a good start. I don't want Lamar Jackson in my starting lineup. It's kind of hard to sit a former MVP. However, he has not proven anything that he can throw yet. Yes, he can hit the guys that are either open or, have good routes. He can get them, but he's got to get those touchdowns up. He's got to be able to get those receivers on deeper passes. It's just you gotta figure out something there. Lamar Jackson with 5 points in fantasy football is not going to cut it. Joe Burrow is going to be a start for me in this matchup. Now, I know what I just said about Lamar Jackson. You could say the same thing about Joe Burrow. However, the only difference is it was sunny in Baltimore and it was raining in Cleveland when the Bengals played them. No excuse for Joe Burrow to play as badly as he did, but it does factor in a little bit of how badly he did play. He did get a lot of passes to Jamar Chase, though, so we'll keep that as an upside going into week 2 with Joe Burrow potentially being a start. For me, if you have a better quarterback, you really shouldn't have a better quarterback. If you were able to swing a Josh Allen or Mahomes, you're playing him over Burrow. But I doubt you have both of those guys. So I would start Joe Burrow if you have him in week 2. Seattle and the Lions, and I'm going to go ahead and start Geno Smith and Jared Goff. Like I just stated with the Jalen Hurts situation in Philadelphia, he had a decent game. They won the game, but he didn't play really great. Geno Smith's going to come back, and it's going to be a great game. These two always play good against each other. They always end up scoring high offenses. It's a 40-35 or 28-29 type of game. It's never really something that bad over the last couple of years. So for that reason, Geno Smith's going to be a start. And Jared Goff did his thing in Kansas City, and Arrowhead, one of the tougher stadiums to play in. And he did really well. He didn't do fantastic, but he did well enough to be a starter in week 1 compared to other quarterbacks. Colts and the Texans, I'm going to go ahead and start Anthony Richardson. He did really well against the Jaguars. Nothing spectacular again, but enough to make him fantasy respectable when it came to points. He also has that rushing upside. Now, he is questionable leading into this week. However, it does seem like he will play in week 2. CJ Stroud as well threw for 242 yards and was 24 for 44, I believe, on the passing completion split. His completion to his attempts were pretty decent. A lot of passing is going to be going around in this game for the Texans, and I expect that to continue like in week 1. So CJ Stroud is going to be a start for me. Bears and Buccaneers. Before you leave the screen again, Justin Fields will be a sit for me. Like I stated, he struggled against the Packers, and the Buccaneers have a really good secondary. I'm not expecting Justin Fields to light it up around the field. They're enough for the receivers to be respectable, but not enough for me to start Justin Fields. I will start Baker Mayfield, though. Yes, I said I will start Baker Mayfield. Now, if you have a better option, play him. But if you're somebody who had Baker Mayfield and Aaron Rodgers because you waited later and later to get another quarterback, then start Baker Mayfield if you don't have another streamable option, because this is a good matchup for him in week 2. Kansas City and the Jaguars, I'm going to go ahead and start Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence in this situation. Both really good quarterbacks. I expect a bounce back from Mahomes. Like I said, Tony's going to get his production back. He's going to get a better fantasy production in week 2, I believe, going into this matchup. Trevor Lawrence showed what he was able to do in week 1 against the Colts. Nothing spectacular, but good enough to be fantasy relevant in week 1, and he's going to continue to be fantasy relevant week to week. Green Bay and the Falcons. Jordan Love will be a start for me. He just looked absolutely phenomenal against the Bears. Nothing too crazy, but he looked good enough to be potentially, if we see something like this all year long, that Aaron Rodgers trade's looking really good for Green Bay. But enough of that. We'll see what happens in week 2. Falcons are a great matchup for Jordan Love, though, so make sure he's in your lineup if you have a spot for him. Desmond Ridder will be a sit for me against this matchup as well. Justin Fields struggled against him, and he has been in the league for a couple years. I don't expect anything to change in this situation for Desmond Ridder being the first time being a full season starting. Las Vegas and the Buffalo Bills. Jimmy Garoppolo is questionable heading into this matchup. Now, Devontae Adams and Myers are going to be targets no matter what when it comes to the receiving side. Jimmy Garoppolo did seem to target Jacoby Myers more. Now, I'm going to sit him regardless if he plays or not. I think this is going to be a revenge game for Buffalo. Their defense is going to be irritated going into this matchup. And Josh Allen, after 3 interceptions, I expect him to kind of bounce back as well. So Josh Allen will be a start and Jimmy Garoppolo will be a sit. Last 1 o'clock game of this slate for the quarterbacks is going to be the Chargers and the Titans. Justin Herbert's going to be a start. Love the matchup. Love the opportunity here for Justin Herbert. Ryan Tannehill for me, on the other hand, is going to be a sit. I like the the defensive line for the Chargers, and I expect them to cause some havoc for Ryan Tannehill in Week 2. San Francisco and the LA Rams. Now, Brock Purdy is going to be a start for me. He is showing that he can sling it left and right. Matthew Stafford will also be a start for me in this matchup, considering what he just did with 2 receivers that nobody really even heard of, or at least one that nobody really even heard of. I expect that to continue at home. So for that, Matthew Stafford will be a start for me. Giants and Cardinals. We're just going to go ahead and throw this one out the door. We don't need it. Crumble up the paper, throw it away. Just start shooting basketballs in your trash can. This is not a good matchup. Daniel Jones and Joshua Dobbs are both going to be sits for me. Sits for me in this matchup. I don't like the production coming out of both these quarterbacks in Week 1, and I don't expect anything to change Week 2. Receivers are going to do enough to get their fantasy points up. It's a lot easier for them compared to quarterbacks. So for that reason, these quarterbacks are going to be sits for me. Jets and the Cowboys, I'm going to go ahead and sit Zach Wilson in this one, and Dak Prescott will be a start. Dak did not throw really a lot of yards in Week 1, didn't really need to. That defense kind of handled their own, and the rushing upside was there. Now, to open up that rushing game again, the Jets might stack that line, or it might be hard for them to rush against the Jets' defensive line. They're going to throw it a little bit more, especially at home. They love to throw it at home. Dak Prescott's going to be a start. Zach Wilson, on the other hand, we'll go ahead and just sit him. I got to see what he can do. He did not play well on Monday night when he had to come in after 4 snaps of Aaron Rodgers. Washington and the Denver Broncos. Sam Howell will be a start for me, and so will Russell Wilson. This is going to be a good matchup, kind of like last week. Not crazy numbers for these guys. Both put up 15 points in PPR leagues, and I kind of expect that to, 15, 20 points roughly for both these guys. I expect that to kind of translate into this game. So they're solid starts. They're going to be able to lock it down for you in Week 2. Sunday Night Football is going to be Miami and the New England Patriots, and Tua and Mac are both going to be starts. Mac Jones did really well against the Eagles. Looks like that offense might start clicking compared to last year. We'll see what happens. But Tua's going to be a start for me. He's a lock. This is a great matchup for Tua. Jalen Hurts kind of struggled on this, but when you have receivers like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you don't got to throw it far. Yak. That's all you need. Yards after catches, and Tua is going to be a guy who you'll be starting in week in and week out. First Monday night game is going to be Derek Carr and Bryce Young matchup with the Saints and the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to go ahead and sit both of these guys. I do not like the matchup when it comes for the quarterback position. This is just going to be a throwaway as well. Now, on the second Monday night game, the Browns did really well. You got 20 to 25 points roughly, for depending on your league scoring, for Deshaun Watson in Week 1 in rain. Now, that being said, with the injuries they have at the defensive line, and they're a little banged up on the offensive side, I expect Deshaun Watson to be able to make some really good decisions here and take more time in possession. That's going to allow for more opportunities as well. So, Deshaun Watson will be a start for me in this one, and Kenny Pickett will be a sit. And that's going to do it for the start, sit, wide receiver, and quarterback rankings. I know this one's going to be a little bit longer. There's a lot to break down and digest from Week 1 into Week 2. Well, hopefully you have your lineup set and ready to go on this beautiful Thursday. Let's go ahead and win some fantasy football matchups. Again, Play Action Fantasy Football. We're here for you. Come get the news. We'll help you out. Cameron here. You guys have a good one.